Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over my truck, top to bottom, the swap from beginning to end, everything you need to know to do a swap in a 2003 to a 2007 powerstroke with an automatic. Everything could be a little different depending on your swap, but this will go over just about everything you need to know. So let's get into it. Starting off with the transmission. In order to keep the factory mechanical fan on the 12-valve Cummins, you're going to have to move the transmission back. In order to do this, the cross member right here is going to have to be moved back at least 2.5 inches. Thankfully, Ford was smart because the F4 and 550s could come with a Cummins. The holes are in the frame already to move the cross member back. This hole and this hole, and there's another hole under here, are the original holes where the cross member was to begin with. All I did was loosen it up, or take the bolts out and slide it back, and we're here where we are now. Another tip that'll help you is here are the bolts for the cushion or bushing that holds the tail housing of the transmission. Also, to help you, go ahead and loosen those up because you may need to slide the transmission either forward or back, more or less, depending on where it goes, where your engine sits. First thing you need to do to move the transmission back is remove your drive shaft. Now, when you remove the drive shaft, there's 4 bolts here, here, and 2 on the other side, and the differential is the same way. Now, if you move the transmission backward, you're going to have the drive shortened. Now, according to the diesel conversion specialist instructions, they want you to shorten the rear drive shaft. Now, if you shorten the rear drive shaft, you're going to have to move the carrier bearing bracket. That's just a lot of pain nobody wants to deal with. I do not know why they would say move or shorten the back drive shaft. My drive shaft shortening cost me $120 at Fort Worth Gear and Axle. They just shortened it here 2¼ inches. That is all my swap needed. Scoot the transmission backwards. Your shifter cable here is going to become very tight. So when you're moving it backwards, watch it. Make sure you do not pull it out of the firewall or bend or break this bracket here. That would be very bad. Also, your cooler lines here on the 5R110 go up to a bypass filter. I have removed this bypass filter because I did the 08 to 10 pan and filter upgrade. Something I highly recommend. If you have any questions about it, let me know and I'll do a video over that by itself. Now, if you leave the factory bypass filter, you're going to have to bend the lines out of the way because they will hit this main cross member right here. You don't have to do nothing major. You're just going to have to slide them out of the way a little bit. This is the Diesel Conversion Specialist engine mounts. I would recommend these. They work very well. You need to move them. Well, you need to bolt them to the cross member right here. And then whenever you put your engine in, if you're going to slide your engine back, it's slid all the way to the back. It'll go all the way back, and that'll be the correct position. Now, the short one here goes on the driver's side, and the long one will go on the passenger side. You can't see it very well, the starter's in the way. But so that way, if you're going to install these, you know where they go. On this engine, I've put an external fuel filter after the Ford factory fuel conditioning system. Now for this, I used the Ford lines, which you can see here, still got the factory quick connects, and I converted them over to AN lines. This is something you can get from Summit. I will find the part number and put it in the description. The Ford factory conditioning unit I like very well. I wish it flowed more volume, but for fuel pressure it does really good. I have it set to around 60 psi. Under heavy throttle it'll drop down to 45, 50, but it does very well. Here's the Ford throttle pedal. I'm using the original one. I did not have the adjustable pedal, so that made it a little easier. I just used a piece of flat bar, bolted it to the side of the pedal the best way I could. Comes up to the top, have it bent, and then I have the Cummins throttle cable slid into it like it would a factory pedal. Now, one thing you need to know is that the length is about 12 inches, and that gives it the perfect pull. That's one reason my transmission shifts as good as it does. I would recommend, if you do this, making the bar here about 12 inches and giving you some adjustment in case you need to shorten or lengthen it. This is going to help you out when it comes to getting the transmission to shift properly. I forgot to mention that my adapter plate is a diesel conversion specialist adapter plate from the engine to the 5R110 automatic. I'm also using a DCS flex plate. They're both extremely good quality. I would definitely recommend that. Now, it is using the 6.0 starter. It does not require any modifications to the starter or the adapter plate or anything like that. You do, however, have to trim the block just slightly. It's not that big of a deal, just an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel. 5 minutes and you're good to go. It's about everything you need to do to get the transmission slid backwards, if that's something you're going to do. Now, I recommend it because the mechanical fan is the way to go. If you're going to do any heavy towing, it's the only way to do it. You cannot compare mechanical fan to any electric fans out there. The factory fan flows 7,500 to 8,000 CFM. There is not a pair of electric fans that can flow that. Flex-A-Lot, their biggest set, flows 4,500 CFM. It just won't do it if you're going to tow. If it's a daily driver or a race truck, by all means, leave the transmission where it's at and run electric fans. But if you plan on towing anything, and I mean anything, move the transmission back and run the mechanical fan. Move it on to the engine bay. We're going to start with the dual battery tray I have here on the driver's side. Now, this is something that was very simple to make. I just used a piece of leftover 12-inch C-channel as my plate, punched some holes in it, and mounted it to the factory mounting holes for the factory battery location. Now, this is something I wanted to do because I knew I was going to run compound turbos, and I would have liked the room for an air filter. As you can see, I have a very large air filter and plenty of room over here in this direction. The brackets I use, this is just 1-inch flat bar you can get from Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever you feel like. And this right here, just a piece of angle. It's not pretty, but it works for now. Here pretty soon, all of this is going to get changed to where it looks much nicer. This was just done towards the end of the swap, and I wanted to get it done so I could drive the truck. Alright, the factory degas bottle is in a, I don't know, I don't like it. I'm going to go ahead and do the all aluminum one. But you can go ahead and get rid of this if you do not want it. You will just have to run an inline cap so you can fill your radiator, because the Ford radiator does not have a cap on it. The heater lines, the factory heater line from the powerstroke that comes off the firewall, the one going to the degas bottle will stay the same. It's right there. Leave it. You don't even have to take it off the truck whenever you go to put this in, because it's going to stay. The other one is going to follow from the firewall, and it's going to go right here to your port where the Dodge Cummins water heater or hose would go. Right here you can see my power steering line coming from the factory booster is going to the Cummins power steering pump. Now, this, you don't have to buy this. You can take your factory line from your Cummins, take it to a hydraulic shop, and they can crimp the old line from your powerstroke line to the Cummins line and be good to go. I personally bought the line from DCS. It was like $100, quick, simple, and didn't require any work. Just bolt it right up and it was good to go. I'm using the powerstroke alternator. I did not want to use the Cummins alternator and have to deal with the voltage regulator and fluttering lights that come in and out because the voltage is not constant. These brackets here, the copper color brackets here, I built out of some plate, 1/2 inch, and some bar. It's very simple, only took me like an hour to make. The holes are threaded into the plate, so I have no nuts. It's just a bolt, and I could change this out in 20 minutes if I needed to. you need to use the factory Ford wiring harness if you're going to use this alternator. Guys, that was just a overview of the transmission and a few little talking points I wanted to get to before I talk about the wiring. Now, I know in the video you're going to see that there's some oil under there. I do have an oil leak, and that's something I need to fix. My top turbo, I decided to use number 10 AN line and stainless steel braided line for the oil drain. I went cheap and bought some eBay fittings. This was a very bad idea. The top 45 that comes right underneath the turbo leaks, and I've been a little lazy and don't want to take the turbo off and fix it because it's kind of a pain to get to. But that's the only oil leak I got, so you know, try not to pay too much attention to it. Let's get into the wiring. Now, wiring is something on these swaps that if you want everything to work, you need to be very meticulous about. You're going to take the wiring harness off of the power stroke, and while you're doing this, you need to label every sensor that you pull off. You know, put a piece of tape around it, label it. Alright, once you get them all labeled, put them down on a piece of paper and mark which ones you're not going to need. You are not going to need your injector harness. You're not going to need your glow plug harness. You not need your fan clutch harness. Well, plug, let me say. You will not need your IPR or your ICP sensors. So those you can go ahead and cut and depin those from the main clip that goes to the computer on the firewall. Now, what you will need to keep your engine temperature, your oil temperature, oil pressure, your MAP sensor. I would recommend keeping your mass airflow sensor that goes on your air filter. You'll need to keep your crank and cam position sensors. We'll go over those here in just a second. Alright, there's a few other little things you can get rid of. I would also recommend keeping your exhaust back pressure sensor. That comes in very handy having it on the OBD2. Now, once you've gotten all the sensors and wires that you're not going to need, and you're sure about it, double, triple check what you are going to need and what you aren't going to need. I recommend taking all of the wire loom, all of the tape, get it all off, but keep your sensors and your plugs labeled, and go set the harness on the engine that you're going to be installing in the truck. Plan it out, map out where your wires are going to go, see if you need to lengthen anything, see if you need to shorten anything. Do that now when the engine's out of the truck, so that when you go to put the harness on, it's just really quick. You ain't going to have to think about it. You're going to do all the thinking about it now. Okay, once you have all that done, you know, take it back in your garage, shop, kitchen, whatever you want to do, just don't piss your wife off. Then go ahead, the next step is going to be your crank position. Now, a lot of people use Swap Helper. I've heard a lot of good things about him and his products. They do work very well. I wasn't keen on doing that. I wanted something that was going to use the Ford sensor. There's a reason it's there. It works good. The tone wheel does not bother me. I don't know why it would, but you know, some people it does bother. So to make this work, you're gonna have to have your crank sensor. You need to strip the loom, pull back the foil insulation. Do not get rid of it. You're gonna need it. Now, closest to the plug on the ECM, about 3 inches off, is where you're gonna tie in your cam position sensor into those two wires. Once you do that, do not cut the crank position wires. Just strip the insulation, attach your cam position wires, solder it, and use some type of either automotive grade electrical tape or heat shrink if you can get it on there somehow. And then from there, put your aluminum foil back on all of the wires. If you do not have it, your tack is going to be jumpy and your transmission will not shift correctly. That's a big problem with these transmissions, is not having a good tachometer signal. Alright, when you go to install the crank position sensor on the tone wheel, you need to have, at the closest, 1,000th clearance between the sensor and the tone wheel. I mean, it needs to be almost touching. If it's any further away, it will give you a jumpy signal and it will not work correctly. That's about it on the wiring. Just be very tedious, take your time, don't get in a hurry. And if you think you've messed up, go read some forums. They will help you a lot. You know, don't hesitate to ask me questions either. I'll help you the best I can. What we're going to talk about is on a 12 valve, especially a P pump, you got to have a fuel shutoff solenoid. Now, the solenoid itself is very simple. It has a pull wire and a hold wire. Okay, you have to have two separate relays to make this work. You have to have one that comes on when you turn your key on. Alright, that's going to be the hold. The pull wire is going to come from your starter wire. So when you turn the key on, you got 12 volts that goes to the starter wire. That's what's actually going to pull the solenoid up. And then when you let off the starter, that relay is going to lose its signal, and the hold wire is going to hold the solenoid up until you turn the key off. Now the hold wire only has to have a 20 amp relay. The pull wire can have no less than a 40. I am doing it with the 40. I have not had any issues. But 40, if you're cranking on the starter too long, it will blow the fuse or the relay itself. So just be careful with that. That is how you get the starter solenoid to work. Now thankfully, on the Ford harness, when you get rid of some of these sensors, you have some keyed ons in the harness that you can pull from right in the engine bay. This makes things really nice, so you don't have to go to the fuse box or any of that. And that's also what I use for my gauges. We're going to talk about the engine here a little bit. It's a 1998 Dodge 12 valve Cummins. It's got 420,000 miles on it. Bone stock, other than the compound turbos, and a number 6 fuel plate and 3K governor springs. Now the 3K governor springs are a must if you're going to use this engine with a 5R110. 5R110 automatic needs all the RPM it can get to shift correctly. And if you want it to shift without any tuning, that's what you're going to have to do. 3K governor springs are 90 bucks on Amazon. Take an hour to change. And it just makes the engine overall run a lot better. Now this P pump has never been off the truck. It's still on factory timing, 13.5 degrees. It's dirty. I didn't clean the engine much before I put it in there. Blew it down, changed a bunch of gaskets, and that was it. This twin feed intake here is something I built, 8 years ago. So don't mind the welds on it. I didn't really know much what I was doing about welding and fabricating then. But it does wonders. Makes the EGTs probably 150 degrees cooler, and looks pretty sweet. The intercooler pipes are 11 gauge 3-inch aluminum piping. I got a V-band clamp there. Regular boots there. Excuse me. I got a boot here which is fixing to be changed out for a V-band clamp. And here's my intermediate pipe. I am working on changing this to a V-band, changing this to a V-band, and rebuilding this. This is a pretty tight bend here, so I'm having to pie cut all of that. The compound turbo setup is an HX35. This is the original off of the 420,000 mile 12 valve. I did nothing to it but changed some wastegate settings on it. The turbo down here is an HX55. It was completely rebuilt. It's got a new compressor wheel in the front. It's not billet, it's still cast, and it does great. The manifold is still the factory 12 valve manifold. I do not like it. We've got some change coming, steed speed hopefully. This here is my exhaust back pressure coil. There's the Ford exhaust pressure sensor. Now if one of these ever goes out, do not go cheap and buy an eBay one. They do not work. Go get an OEM part. O'Reilly's does sell them, or you can go to the Ford house. The air filter here is a diesel power source air filter. It's huge. It's the reason I like it. And it fits really well. here soon. I've got a 60-degree bend here that I'm going to make the filter square, and we'll build a box around and put some glass on top of it and make it look really nice. The valves I did adjust at 8 and 18, 8 intake, 18 exhaust. They probably need to be done again. They're getting a little loud. I'm going to do that whenever I do the timing. I'm going to bump up to 16 degrees, but not before head studs get installed. Well, in my case, new head bolts. We'll go over that when that video comes. Now this is my top radiator hose, built out of some 1 3/4 pipe. Gives it a really clean look, much better than the rubber hose. I'm using some 2-inch T-bolt clamps. I do not like regular hose clamps. They suck, they break, and they do not have the clamping force that T-bolt clamps have. The AC line coming from here down to the Dodge AC compressor was from Diesel Conversion Specialist 2. If you're going to want AC, I highly suggest this instead of trying to find an AC shop to do it for you. I looked forever before I went ahead and bought this, and it just wasn't worth my time to do it myself, so I bought it, and it's worked ever since and never had any problems. The intercooler, it's a factory intercooler, 6.0 intercooler. I do not like it. We're getting upgraded soon. Same thing with the radiator. It's going to be upgraded. This is going to be an eBay special. I've read a lot about it. The eBay special ones are just as adequate as the Mishimoto when it comes to the radiator itself. There's the trailer, boys. Gonna hook up and go load up some more hay. All right, here I am about to hook up the trailer. Hope you liked the video. It's pretty informational, I hope. It's about everything you need to know. If not, I will make some more videos on if I remember anything or if y'all ask me some more questions. We'll be doing a video on how to tune the 5R110 with an SCT programmer to get it to lock up like my transmission does. That's something I feel that a lot of people would like to know, and I'll just go ahead and make a video about it. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoy, and have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.